VLANs, VLANs, VLANs. Hey YouTube universe, welcome to the Ethernet Blueprint channel. My name is Tim Trich, and today we are going to be setting up some VLANs and firewall rules on a UDM Pro running 3.0.27 OS and a network application running 8.0.26. So stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. So we are going to be doing some stuff about VLANs today, and one of the big reasons why we are talking about this, and one of the big reasons this has sparked a lot of need in people's homes, is because of IoT devices. So I thought it'd be silly or whatever, good to just start off with a little bit of IoT humor for you guys. It's pretty common nowadays to have these devices sitting in our homes, talking to the internet, making orders for you, whatever. This depicts a little bit and makes fun of it, but at the end of the day, that's scary stuff. And they don't really bake a lot of security into these devices because they sell them they want to sell them to everybody, and they want to make them affordable. So it's kind of hard to have it both ways. And so you're left with either rolling the dice or protecting yourself as good as you can with something like VLAN. So let's go ahead and get started. We got a lot to cover today. I just want to kind of go over what that's going to look like, and then we'll kick this off, and I'll go to my screen sharing, and we'll actually do the work so you guys can see it in action. But this is kind of what we're going to do. So we are going to be starting with a basic setup with the UDM. So if you just set up your UDM, don't set anything, just defaults. There's no wireless networks, no regular networks, no VLANs, no nothing set up. But the equipment has been adopted, and it's a basic configuration, and everything's up to date. So that is where we're starting. I'm not going to go through how to set up the UDM Pro. I'm going to be doing some other videos on that later. So today we're starting with one already built, so we can just focus on VLANs. We're going to take a brief tour of what I have for my setup and equipment, basically what I just described. And then we are going to create a couple VLANs. Now, if you haven't watched my last video where I talk about VLANs, I talk about a good starting point. And I think what we're building today is a very, very good starting point. You don't have to have 30 VLANs. And the downside to that is, or why I say that is as you start buying equipment and whatever, unless it's very specifically fits in that slot, security cameras go in security and IoT go into IoT, the lines get a little blurry. Well, where do I stick this? Which VLAN do I put it in? And then you got to make a bunch of rules to make sure everything can talk to it. So what we're setting up today is a great start, basic configuration that I think all of you guys should do if you're looking to do some VLANs, and then grow it from there. What you learn in today's video will give you the principles you need to do that. So this is a good starting one. We're going to have a default network, an IoT network, and a guest network. Guys, that's it. A camera network can be talked about, but again, if you pick up what we're putting down here, you'll be able to build a camera network too. So this is what we're building today. I think it's a great starting point. It just separates that IoT stuff, separates your guest traffic. I think that's very important, and allows you to put stuff that you care about in your default network. Then we're going to take a quick look at the Unifi VLAN viewer that was part of the version 8 upgrade, or maybe it might have been late version 7. I can't remember when it was actually released, but Unifi has changed the look and feel of setting up VLANs. I have another video I did early 2022, and it's out of date. I mean, they've changed enough that it's different. So we're going to take a look at the VLAN viewer, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then for Wi-Fi, we're going to just create a single SSID, but we're going to use 3 pre-shared keys. Now, what does that mean? That means instead of setting up 3 different Wi-Fi networks, one for guests, one for IoT, and one for our normal traffic, we're actually going to set up one Wi-Fi name, a single Wi-Fi name, and it'll have 3 different passwords. And depending on which password you put in will be what your device connects to. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we're doing it. And then, but just know that this will work if you decide to set up 3 different Wi-Fi networks as well. That's irrelevant. The VLANing and firewalling is going to happen on the back end. And then we're going to build firewall rules. We're going to secure those networks in what I would refer to, again, as a base configuration, something that I think every Ubiquiti network out there needs at a minimum to set up, just to kind of get you guys started. And again, I can't even pretend what's in you guys' networks. So I can't, designed specifically for you. So to me, this is a nice baseline that get you going in the right direction. All right, so this is what the network looks like. And I put these on slides specifically so you could come back, freeze the camera, or whatever, freeze the video and write stuff down or take notes or whatever. So I thought that was important for the learning stage. People like to write stuff down when they're learning, at least I do. So, we'll kind of go from there. But basically, my network is going to be a UDM Pro. I have a 16-port PoE switch, and then we have a single Flex HD access point. So we can do wired VLANs, we can do wireless VLANs. Then you can see I have a couple devices in here. So we have a basement Apple TV, and then the living room Ultra, which is a Roku. The reason I put those in there, they're physically connected to the switch, and we'll put them on different VLANs and then try and ping back and forth. One of the downsides of using laptops and stuff is you got to make sure Windows Firewall is off, and just if your pings aren't going through, you don't know if it's because of the firewall rules or whatever. I didn't want to get into that with this video, so for today we just kept it easy. We just used two devices that we should be able to ping no matter what, and then I'll show you how the security gets enforced. Our default network is going to be basically it's VLAN 1 built into the system, and we're just going to use the simple IP schemes, guys, nothing crazy. 192.168.1.1. The IoT will be VLAN 2, 192.168.2.1, and then our guest network, I always like to use something kind of a little bit more obscure, so we're going to do VLAN 99 and do a 192.168.99.1. Over on the right, our SSID is going to be called My New Wi-Fi, and the default network password is just going to be 1 through 9. The IoT password is going to be capital IoT 1 through 3, 4, 5, and the guest network is going to be capital G guest 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that is going to be our setup, guys. That's what we're doing. We're going to keep this pretty simple so we can keep it moving along. If the more VLANs and the more stuff I create, the more rules and the longer the video and the more crap I get for talking too long, which happens to me all the time. All right. So I also wanted to summarize what we're creating. This is in order what I'm going to be doing as part of in the video. So this way you could pull up just this slide if you just need a quick little refresher or whatever. I'm also, and I've never done this before, but I'm going to attempt to put timestamps in my video today, again, to help you guys try and find a certain spot if there's something you want to talk about. But basically, this is what we're going to do. We're going to create LAN in firewall rules to establish those traffic rules, and we're going to allow the default network to any establish and related traffic. We're going to drop any invalid traffic. We're going to create IP groups, and I'll show you and talk about that a little bit today. We're going to allow the default network to be able to talk to all of our private IP. So basically, that third rule down where it says, the third spot where it says LAN in, we're going to allow our main network to communicate with our regular network, but our regular network cannot communicate back on their own. It just allows the established and related. Basically, it's a one-way street, right? So if the communication started on the main network, on our non-protected or our started on our default network, it can go out and the devices can communicate back. But the communication can't start in the IoT network. They cannot talk directly to us, but they can respond to us if we start the conversation. That's what this is all about. Now, I do have a little bit in yellow there in the middle that basically says, you might have some other devices, and we'll talk about that, creating rules around them, but we're not actually going to do it. But I just want to make sure we talk about it. And then we're going to basically allow with the LAN local devices to make sure these networks, except the default network, cannot get to your UDM Pro interface and log in and all the other stuff because those are different types of firewall rules. So that is what we're creating here, guys. And I wanted to put it on this one slide again so you guys could just come to this one page and be like, oh, that's right, that's what I needed to do, or that's what I forgot, or whatever. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch and share my screen, and we're going to do this thing together. And so let's go ahead and get that started right now. Okay, guys, hey, welcome to the configuration part of this video. So I am going to try and keep this pretty quick, but at the same time, I want to explain things. So if you're new to VLANs, this is actually helpful to you. So I talk fast in general, but we're going to cover a lot here. So just kind of bear with me as we go through this. All right, so a couple things I want to highlight real quick right away. We are running OS 3.2.7. And on our network, we're running 8.0.26. So if you're running different versions and your screens look a little bit different, just know that Ubiquiti has changed some things. And so you may want to get up to this version for this video to apply to you. I did a VLAN version video about a year ago on the older version and kind of created a lot of the same concept and talked about a lot of these same things. So if you don't want to update, you could go watch that video. Either way, follow my page. Okay, so here we go. I want to do that. And then I want to show you real quick. So we're going to be creating firewall rules. We're going to be creating our networks, our VLANs. I'm going to show you how to do that. And we're just going to kind of power through this. Now, one of the things I wanted to show you here before we start creating things is this, it's a port viewer, right? So this was always here before. You could get to these things before. But you used to have to click into the switch and to get there, and there's like 3 clicks to get there. Now they've created their own little button over here, which is really, really great. But as it pertains to VLANs, there's also a VLAN viewer here. So you'll see this change as we create these networks, and I'll show you kind of how it works. I think this is a really good tool for them to incorporate for especially people learning VLANs for the first time, which is really, really cool. As you can see, this is our network. We have a couple things to ping here later so we can kind of do some testing and make sure our VLANs are working. And then we have our devices like we talked about. So we should be good. Now, as I showed you earlier, we're going to do a list of things here. The first thing we're going to do is create our networks. Then we're going to create a Wi-Fi network. Then we're going to go do some testing. And then we're going to create our firewall rules and do some more testing. So bear with me as we kick through this thing. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is create our VLANs. So in order to do that, we go into settings, and then we choose networks, and we're going to create a new virtual network. Now, this one is created by default when we built the UDM Pro, all right? Right here is how we create a virtual LAN or a virtual network, okay? So we're going to click on that. We're going to give it a name. It could be whatever you want. Like my example, I'm just going to call mine IoT. Keep it simple. I think that what I'm building here is kind of a baseline that everybody should build into their equipment. And then if you want more VLANs, go ahead and add to it. But this is, to me, kind of like the base of what every network should have. So we're going to create an IoT network. We're going to turn off this stupid auto scaler just by checking the button. Now, I always like this octet right here to match my VLAN ID down here. So I'm going to switch on to manual, and I'm going to switch this over to 2, which it shows by default. And we're going to go ahead and say add. That's it. Now we have an IoT network on VLAN 2. If I click into that, you can see it's going to hand out these IP addresses, okay? And it's going to be on a completely different network than our default network. All right, so let's go create our guest network. We have to create a VLAN for our guests to use. So we're going to create a new one. We're going to call it guest. Okay, turn off the dumb auto scaler. And this one I had is VLAN 99. Go down here, choose manual, 99. Now, for guests, you're going to do a little bit different. All right, we're going to let the system create our guest network for us. Ubiquiti does a good job with this. There is some difference between checking this box and not checking it, which we'll cover here. So by checking this, these things happen. Your guest portal, your guest hotspot portal profile will automatically be applied, and this will be created as a guest network. Any changes you need to make, you have to make in the hotspot profile, which I'm going to show you here because it's a little sneaky thing they did that kind of drives me nuts. But basically, before I hit save, I'll go here to cancel. If I go over here to settings and security and go to my firewall rules, you can see our guest, we don't have anything here. There is no rules created. Now let's go create that guest network real quick. Okay, so I'm going to just redo these steps real fast. Autoscaler, 99, manual, 99. Check this box. Okay, and I'm going to hit add. All right, now if we go back over into security, firewall rules, you can see we have all these rules that were created for us. Everything built for us. All grayed out. We cannot change any of these. And that's one of the big reasons why I like to be able to create our IoT network a little different is so we can manipulate those VLANs. We can tweak the rules the way we want them. The guest network's kind of all or nothing. Now it's done well. The guest network can't get to anything they're not supposed to, but at the end of the day, if you're creating a camera network and it needs to be able to talk to the Synology network and all this other stuff, you have special circumstances, it's better to create a network that allows you to make the firewall rules the way you want them. All right, so everything in here is just the built-in. We have not made anything outside of the guest network. Now, there's a couple things I'm going to show you here. This is kind of something sneaky that Ubiquiti did. So when you check that box for your guest network, oh, sorry. First, we have to create our Wi-Fi. So we're going to do that real quick. So let's create our Wi-Fi. We just created our VLANs. So we have no Wi-Fi networks. We just have the VLANs, the networks underlying built into the router. So let's go into our network, go in here. We're going to create my new Wi-Fi. All right. And instead of putting a password here, you could do this. I'll explain the difference. We're going to go down here and we're going to do this private pre-shared keys. Now this works. Notice we created our networks first, right? So now when I drop this down, you can see my VLANs right here. So we have our default network. I'm going to choose the password that I want someone to type in to connect to my default network. And don't use that password, guys. Next, we're going to choose the password for our IoT devices, which again, according to my sheet, was capital IoT 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll choose add. So if someone enters that password, they will be put on VLAN 2. Cool, right? So now we're going to go down to guest and we're going to type our guest password there, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to add that. So now we have 3 passwords for a single Wi-Fi name. This is something new that Ubiquiti did, okay, recently. And I think it's kind of cool. I haven't played with it too much, to be honest with you, so I don't know the ins and outs of what work really well. But I wanted to include in this video, I just wanted to let you know at this point, you don't have to do it this way. All the rules we're creating will still work if you create my new Wi-Fi, my guest Wi-Fi, and my IoT Wi-Fi, 3 separate networks with 3 separate passwords, okay? Just know that you can do that. I'm going to turn off band steering. These are some of the other settings you can play with. I'll turn on fast roaming, and we'll go ahead and add the network. Now, the sneaky thing that they did. The sneaky thing they did was when you check that box that you want isolation, it enables this guest profile hotspot, okay? And we have that turned on. Now, over here, look at my little list of icons. Notice there's nothing right here. Watch me. I'm going to refresh the page. Let it refresh. Come on, baby. Now you can see we have a hotspot manager right here. Now, it doesn't just pop in on its own. It's kind of sneaky, kind of goofy like that. So if someone connects to the guest Wi-Fi, they are going to be presented with this landing page right here, where before they'll go to Google and it'll redirect them to here, and they have to choose login. You can show them the terms and services, all this garbage before they can get online. I don't like these. I just want my guests to be able to come in, put their password in, and go. This will confuse people, right? Now it's cool. It's neat. You can put your own little logo in there and tweak it and make it say, you know, stay off bad websites or whatever you want to say. I like it, but I like it for a business where people expect it. At my house, I don't really need it. So we're going to turn this off. This is the landing page. So we're going to click here. We're going to go to settings and we're going to uncheck the show landing page. So you can see it's disabled. It says it right there. And then we're going to get out of here. So there isn't a save. You just uncheck it and it's off. So now your guest can just type that guest password and get on. But this gets turned on by default. Now, I've done this 100 times, which is why mine was I had to click it on. But when you create your VLAN for the first time, you've never had it, or any isolated network, this is going to be enabled for it. And so it's one of those things that you got to look out for. Maybe you want it. That's cool. But I don't. So that's how you shut it off. All right. So, and remember, you got to refresh your screen before this little hotspot manager can come in. All right, so something you guys should know. By default, when you create VLANs with Ubiquiti, this is different based off of your provider or based off of your equipment, but all VLANs can talk to all VLANs. Now, in our case, in our specific case, our guest network is completely isolated. So we're going to leave it off the table. So when I say networks can talk to networks, right now my IoT network can talk to my guest or my default, and my default can talk to my IoT right out the box. Nothing's being blocked. All right. That's why these firewall rules are important. Okay. You can create VLANs all day. If you don't create the rules to lock things down, they can get the things they're not supposed to, because by default, everything can talk, specifically with Ubiquiti. That's a Ubiquiti thing. And I know there's some other vendors out there that do that too, but some block by default, Ubiquiti allows by default. All right. So right now, all these networks can talk to each other, and we're going to prove that. All right, guys, so I just want to get a couple things set up here. So I went over to my client. You can see we have my laptop. This is what I'm on right now. I connected to the guest network and pulled a 2.37 address. We have my Apple TV is also on the IoT network, but I left my Ultra, my Roku, on the default network. Now we're going to show that I can ping from my laptop to this, no problem. So we're going to come over here. We're going to choose ping 192.168.1.69, okay? And you can see I can talk to it just fine, all right? So there's no restrictions taking place. Now I'm going to show you at the end of this, when we're all said and done, that we'll actually be blocking that. One other thing I'm going to show you is, while on the IoT network, I can also access the gateways, all right? So one thing I can do is, if I'm on the 2.1 network, you can see my gateway is 2.1. And if I bring up a browser here, I'm going to bring this down so you guys can see it, and I go to 192.168.1.1, okay, it will bring up the Ubiquiti iOS. I can get to this gateway. We're going to create a rule that blocks that as well. So, and same with 192.168.2.1. Hopefully I typed that right. Okay. So 2.1, I can get there as well. We're also going to block this. So everything works right now out the gate. No matter which VLAN you're on, 1 or 2, you can get everywhere you want to go. Okay. Again, guest is separate. So we're kind of leaving them out of the conversation. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and create some firewall rules. All right, in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and go down to settings. Now we're going to be in two different screens. One is the security screen where the firewall rules are set up, and the other is in the profiles. We're going to be actually creating IP groups and port groups. Now, what is a port group and why are they important? All right, so basically this is going to allow us to make a single firewall rule apply to multiple IP addresses. And here's the example I'll give you. Let's say you're creating a camera VLAN, okay, and you have 10 cameras that need to talk back into the default network, let's just say, okay? And you could go through and you could say, allow this camera, 1.2. whatever, to talk to the default network, and then allow this camera, 3. whatever, to talk to the camera. Okay, so you have all these individual cameras, and you're making 12 different rules for them to be able to talk or not talk someplace. Or you could come in here and make a port group in here called cameras, okay, and call it an IP group, and say camera 1 is 192.168.2.12. Okay, perfect. Add that. And then the second camera is 192.168.2.13. Okay, that's in there. And then I can create a rule that applies to this camera group, and all the IP addresses that are in that group will be applied to that rule. So it makes it much, much cleaner and simpler to do. Now, one thing I will tell you is, even if I have a single IP address, which I'm going to show you today, I will still use an IP group or a port group. Now, that may not be to your liking. It's kind of a personal preference. You don't have to do that. Obviously, it's a single rule or a port group with a single IP. But at the same time, you can make that call for yourself. But this is how we're going to use them, and why they're really, really important, and why I like them. Okay, so we're going to be bouncing between the Profiles tab and the Security tab. So we're going to go over to Security. We're going to go ahead, click on Firewall Rules. We're going to go into our LAN, and we're going to create a new entry. All the rules that we're creating are going to be in this LAN category, or this group. These are WAN rules. This is all the rules listed in one place. These are our guest rules, and then this is all IPv6. Everything, if you're making a rule that says, I want this VLAN to talk to this VLAN, you're going to do it in the LAN rules. And you're going to use it with the LAN in. That's why I put this on your cheat sheet for you, okay? So we're going to actually come in here. We're going to go over here to the name. You can name it whatever you want. I'm going to call this allow established and related. Okay, we're going to allow that traffic. We're going to allow anything to talk to anything, but we do have to, we're matching a state of the traffic. So we need to, any in here, we're just leaving it all open, but we need to check these boxes. So I hit manual, establish, related, and we're going to allow that rule to take place. Okay, we're basically saying allow all good traffic to happen, right? Allow all good traffic. And this is also going to allow it so when we create a rule that says our default network can talk to our IoT network, we're going to make it so the IoT network can talk back, okay? But if the communication starts in the IoT network, it cannot reach out and talk directly to the default network. So it's a one-way sort of deal. We want them to be able to talk back, but we don't want them to be able to start a communication. We don't want something to get hacked and have it shoot over. But yet, if I call my IoT device, I want it to be able to talk back. So that's kind of the gist with that. So now we're going to go ahead and create another entry, LAN in. We're going to drop all about invalid stuff, invalid traffic, or states. We'll put invalid state. Okay, so we're going to choose drop instead of accept. Okay, any, go to manual, and we're going to check this box down here. So basically say we're going to allow all the good stuff. We're going to drop all the bad stuff. That's really what that kind of means. Now, for this next part, we are going to create our first group. So we're going to go into our IP groups. We're going to call this all private IPs, okay? All private IPs. This is going to be an IP subnet group, all right? And it is going to be the following: 192.168.1.1 or 0.0/16. Add 172.16.0.0/12. Add 10.0.0.0/8. Basically, every routable private IP address is included in this. And because we create that group, we can make rules that say this is allowed or this is denied to everything, basically. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and add that. Now we have an all private IPs group. So now that we have that, we are going to go back into our security, go into our firewall rules, make sure we click on LAN over here, create an entry, LAN in. We're going to allow default, so our main network, to all private. Okay, so we're going to allow. We are going to come down here. We're going to choose the network because we're specifically talking the default network. We want the default network to have this privilege only. Okay, and we're going to change this to all private IPs. Okay, we're talking to this group, so the default network can talk to everything. We're allowing that traffic. We're going to say add. Okay, now we are going to create one more, and we're going to say drop all private IP communication. Okay, so now this is a drop rule, so we're going to choose drop, and we're going to say any private IP to any private IP. Okay, so why is this okay? Why do we do it like this? So basically, whenever your traffic is going through the firewall and it's checking its rules, it's going to read these in order. It's going to check off this box, then this one, then this one. When it finds a rule that applies, it'll apply that rule, and no rules below it will get applied. Okay, so we basically put the accept rule here. We're only accepting good traffic. We're dropping all bad traffic. If it's good traffic, it's going to get in here and it's going to say, is it from the default network? Yes or no. And if it's yes, then it's going to say, okay, that it can talk. So that means our default network can talk to our IoT network, no problem. However, If it's coming from the IoT network, it's going to say, is it from the default? Nope, it's from the IoT. Okay, that's dropped. We don't allow that. And that's basically, that locks down your IoT so it can't talk to anything unless you want it to. And here's what we're going to talk about. I had that big section in yellow. So we're going to go back to our camera example. Let's just say you had something in the IoT network that you needed to be able to talk to the default network up here. All right. And I'm going to create a fake one here. So we're going to go in here. We'll call it LAN in. We're going to say camera to default. Okay. Just as our example. All right. I don't have a camera network, so I'm just going to leave it any, but you would choose the network, you choose the camera network, and then you come down here and you choose network and you choose default, and you just have to make sure that, you know, you got the right stuff in there, and then you'd add the rule. Now, look, it added it right here. All right. So we don't want it right here because we're saying all private communication is dropped at this point. So in that case, if you have stuff in your secure network, we'll say, that needs to talk to the rest of the network, maybe it's to a computer to a printer, whatever it is, you're going to have to move these rules up above this drop all, because we're dropping everything at this point. This is kind of like your end all be all rule, but you can put your one-offs, your specialty rules that allow certain things on your network to communicate above that rule, and they will work. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to, that was an example. I'm going to delete this because it isn't part of our deal. I just want to drive my point home as to how that works. Okay. Now that we have this, let's go back and try and ping our same device. So if we go over here into our clients, you can see we're still at 169. My laptop is at 2.37, but I'll verify that. Yep. Okay. So now let's go ping. Actually, I'm just going to hit the up arrow. Okay. And you can see I cannot get to that ultra anymore. I just can't do it. Okay. But I could make a rule that allowed my computer, which is 2.37, to communicate with 1.69 if I wanted to. I just have to move that rule up above the drop all. But you can see I can no longer get there. Okay. Now, something I can still do even though those rules are set, and that is I can still get to 192. Remember, I'm on the IoT network, .168.1.1. I can still get to here. Well, why is that? I'm jumping VLANs. Well, I'm actually accessing the router itself. I'm not jumping to another VLAN. I'm talking to the gateways. So we're going to block this part next. Okay, we'll go there. We'll get rid of that. All right, so let's go back to our rules. We have to create a couple IP rules here. Okay, we're going to create a couple groups. All right, so we're going to go into profiles. We're going to come in here. We're going to create a new, and basically we're going to block the IoT network from getting to all other gateways. So if you have 5 gateways, you have to put other ones in there. In our example, we only have 3 total gateways. Okay, so we're going to say block this group is going to be called block IoT to other gateways. All right, it is going to be an IP group, and we're just going to list out the other addresses. So 192.168.1.1, okay, that's one gateway. And then 192.168.3.1, okay? So now we have our other gateways included in there. All right, so we're going to block those. So we're going to create a rule around this. All right, so now we're going to go back over into our security, go back into our firewall rules. Now, if we're talking about hitting the router itself, that is a LAN local rule. So this is not going to be a LAN in. This will be a LAN, whoops, not LAN out either, LAN local. That means we're talking about hitting the router. So we're going to say drop IoT to other gateways. That's what this rule is going to do. It's going to drop that network. We're going to drop it. It is going to be from the IoT network. Okay, so choose network IoT, and then we are going to choose this. So we're basically saying the network cannot get to these devices on a LAN local rule, and we're going to add that rule. Okay, so now we shouldn't be able to get to 192.168.1.1. And you can see it's just spinning and spinning and spinning. Okay, now you can still get to 2.1, our own gateway, right? We blocked 3.1 and 1.1. We did not block our own. And we want to. We do not want our IoT devices to be able to get here. So we're going to block that next, okay? I'm going to X out of that. We are going to create a couple more IP groups. So we're going to come over here, create new. First one that we're going to create is the ports. These are going to be port groups. So when you go to a web page, you're going on port 80 or port 443, or if you're SSHing into it, we're going to block SSH too. So we're going to create a port group first. So this is going to be HTTP, HTTPS, and SSH. It is going to be a port group, okay? Not an IP group. This is going to be the actual ports. So this is port 80, add, port 443, add, and port 22. Add, okay? Now we have a port group. Now we have to create one more. So this is what I was talking about. You can create a group even though it has one IP in it. So we're going to call this the IoT gateway. It is a network, and there's only one IP, 192.168.2.1. Okay, that's the only IP in there. Now you don't have to create this, and you could just type in this, I think, but I think this is the easier way to do it. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So now we have IoT gateway, and now we're going to go back to our security firewall rules. So again, I told you a lot of back and forth. Go to LAN, create an entry. This is going to be another LAN local since we're hitting the router. We are going to drop IoT to its gateway. Okay? So we're going to drop. We are going to say it is from the network IoT. It is a port group. It is the IoT gateway on these ports. So basically it's saying I can't get to 192.168.2.1, my own gateway, on any of these three ports. And we're going to drop that. So now we're going to click that. And now when we go into here, 192.168.2.1. And you can see I can no longer get there because I'm going to my own gateway, this IP address, on port 80, right? So this is good, right? Think of it from a standpoint of your devices that you only want to go to the internet. You do not want them to go be able to pull up your router. Let's say if one of them gets attacked, you do not want your attacker to be able to get access directly to the gateway of your router. For a brute force attack, man-in-the-middle attack, whatever it needs to do, you just don't want that, okay? So that is what we're creating. And that is it, guys. That is the baseline. Now, obviously, if you have more VLANs, there's more stuff to do here. Some of these port groups are going to be tweaked a little bit because you'll have additional IP addresses to put in them. But this is a great starting point for anything that you're trying to do. It's isolating the IoT network so it can only get to the internet, plus any special rules that you put in, right? It allows you to do that, but yet still isolates it. Your guests automatically just get put in a guest network that can't get anywhere but the internet. So if they have crap on their computer from downloading music, it's not going to affect you. And it allows your default network to talk to everything, okay? So I want to point something out here. And I've talked about this in my VLAN video too, where we just talked about VLANs. If your default network gets compromised, you still have problems, right? This is not the end all be all to security. This is just a layer of security. So you still need to be careful when opening up emails and things like that. Things can still talk to each other inside the default network. It doesn't block all that. So just make sure you guys are careful when it comes to this stuff. But that's it, guys. And thank you for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. Hopefully you guys find this helpful. Please leave comments, leave whatever. Guys, we're all here to learn, myself included. I'm not a teacher. I just do this on a daily basis. I like doing it. I like educating people. And so, but if there's people out there say, hey, what about this? You forgot about this. What about this? Throw it out there. Let's all learn together. That is what this channel is for. So I just really appreciate it. Guys, I encourage you to like or subscribe. If you learn from this channel, please come along with me on my other videos. You can put suggestions of things you want to learn about, and I'll do my very best. I'm small enough that I can actually listen to your suggestions and make videos around it. So, and I try to do that. But hopefully this was helpful to anybody starting out in the VLAN world. You can see if we go over our little VLAN section, I don't think I pointed this out, but this is that virtual VLAN. You can see we got VLAN 2. You know, I love what Ubiquiti is doing here. It's quick, it's easy, it's awesome. And so again, hopefully this was helpful. All right, I'm going to sign off of the configuration part. We'll do my sign off, and we will see you guys later. Thanks.
Hey guys, thanks for watching my video today on VLAN. So I know there's no real fast way to talk about it, but I wanted to be thorough, but I also wanted to just get right in there and get going. Guys, if you made it this far, please consider liking or following my channel. I am small enough that I can listen to your comments and try and really help you out with things. I really actually enjoy that aspect of being a small channel. So please consider liking and following me. We're going to be talking more about this kind of stuff as we go along. I am going to do some more on the UDM Pro and setting them up and get into some of the settings I didn't talk about today in a later video. So if you want to learn about that stuff, by all means, please consider liking or following me, and we will see you guys in a future video. Thanks a lot, and happy VLANing.